All right, everybody, welcome in. It is Wednesday, October 1st of 2025. It is a new month. So, three cheers for a new month and we're getting closer. And please, I'm not trying to scare anybody, but we're getting closer to the end of the year and kicking things off and it's a wonderful time to be thinking about like what's next and turning a new leaf, reference to the fall, all kinds of fun stuff. But today, our topic is fostering belonging through psychological safety. And I think in today's kind of fast paced world and everything is kind of like on demand and an email can't get there fast enough and our diverse workplaces, psychological safety isn't just kind of a nice to have, it's imperative that we have. It's essential. Employees need to feel safe at work, where we get ideas and suggestions, and people might actually challenge the status quo. And are we, not only HR, but our managers and supervisors, is everybody creating an environment, reinforcing an environment that one, safety is there, but that we belong and that we connect? And how are we as an organization in all aspects, from before we even hire somebody to that onboarding activities, set of activities, reinforcing, and even our long term employees continuing to reinforce you are here. We want you here. You are part of us. Because honestly, if anybody ever has any kind of fear of speaking up or speaking out or just asking a question, that's not what we're looking for. So you're in the right place, you're on the right plane if those are the kinds of topics you kind of want to explore today. So if you are new to us, HR Lunch Bunch meets the first Wednesday of every month unless there's a holiday or something else going on in a major way in the HR space and it doesn't make sense for us to compete. If you're new to us and you don't know me, my name is Deborah Jeffries. I work at HR Answers, where I have for over 3 decades. This is what I do in terms of education, spend time in front of people in real life as well as on camera. I serve as the vice president of the organization. There's my contact information if you want to officially connect with me in some fashion or another. HR Lunch Bunch has been around for over 20 years. It started as an employee idea, and when they departed the organization, they actually kept it going. And then they said they needed a break. And I said, you can't stop this thing. This is good. We used to meet in person. We used to have lunch together around a table in our training room. And then that little thing happened just, several years ago. And we said, let's go remote. And we have. And then we have people from around the state that can join us, like Robin. She doesn't live anywhere close to us in the office or my home. And the answer is we can have people from around the state and out of state. I think the furthest we've had is Ohio. And that's wonderful. We can network with other people in HR around the country. And that really what this is about, a discussion around a topic. And I'm working on topics for 2026. So if you have ideas or suggestions, things we should talk about, things you want to learn a little bit about, things you want to hear from others, what's working, what's not working inside their organization, absolutely. Send me a note, put something in the chat box. I won't close that out until we're done and I capture those ideas. Because otherwise, these are just coming from my head, things that I'm reading, things that I get in emails, things from magazines. And I'd rather hear from you all. What are you struggling with? What do you want to talk about? What's meaningful to you? All right. So, will you should feel free to unmute yourself. I've got full blown slides that say question. That means you talk. All right. Putting the expectation out there. You have the chat box. You can use that too. But I say, let's talk, let's learn, let's have some fun. Sound good? Use those emojis. Come on, let's go. All right, this is me without coffee. All right, fostering belonging through psychological safety. And I think sometimes our business leaders, because I want to talk a little bit about, our managers too and what they can do in this area. But I think we've got, maybe some skills gaps. We've got some cost saving measures that we're putting from a hiring. But all of this stuff that's going on, retention, retention. We want to retain our good people. And I think this can be part of that thought process. It isn't the only thing. I mean, definitely we got to get work done. But sometimes in the old days, and old days are not that long ago, we wanted loyalty. Well, what are we as an organization doing to foster that and offer that to our employees? No guarantees of employment, but how are we building connections within our workplaces and making sure that we are making a difference for folks? So let's let's see if we can enhance some things. So you tell me, if I asked you just for one word that you might use to describe belonging, what would your one word be? Put it in the chat box. Let's see all those descriptive words. Okay, we have inclusive, inclusivity, acceptance, respect, team, respected, safety, affirmation, contribute. Okay, like it. Nice. And you notice a little duplication, but not lots of duplication, right? And so this may even be something that one of the things that I also try and do, again, for some of you who may be new to HR Lunch Bunch, is that sometimes some of this information, I purposely have designed it so that you can take it back and then have conversations with your management team or maybe design some training in house. So I purposely have done that, which is one of the reasons why I'm willing to share the PowerPoint so that you can then piggyback off of that in some fashion or another. So being able to ask this question, because then what is it that your employees are thinking, right? Because my impression is you're going to get a lot of different answers. And that then gives you a feel for usually people are answering these things because then that's what they would like to have. It's what they are willing to give or to do. So when we think about that, then my question for you is inside your organization, what do you think? What are you doing that you believe is giving an employee the sense or a feeling that they do belong? And I'm the way I'm thinking about this, they said yes to your job offer. They now are coming to work for you, with you in some department. Don't we want to reinforce their good decision that they made the right decision? So what are you doing? So Robin says we hook them up with a buddy. Wonderful. Okay. And hopefully maybe that also includes we've done a little buddy training that we're picking good people, not just that they volunteered, right? Because we want people who want to reinforce the core values of the organization, right? That are have some energy behind being a buddy. Because there can be people who are looking for a few new recruits that are probably not our best representative of the organization, right?
Deborah, one of the things that we're doing is we have started 30, 60, 90-day checkpoints, touch points. So not just your normal 90-day review. And we've included HR in those conversations. So not only are we asking the new hires how they, what they're feeling, but also what their onboarding experience has been. And so that's been really kind of eye-opening, for myself as well. It's like, oh, okay, we should start doing this or that or the other thing. So kind of putting it back on them of, how are you feeling? What can we do to help?
Yes,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah.
And are you also asking a question like what could we be doing differently?
Yes.
Did we miss something? Um,
Yes.
or even how was your onboarding or your training like you thought it would be?
Oh,
How
yeah.
is
That's
it
good.
how is it different?
Yeah. That's a good way of putting it as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think sometimes we've done such a good job. We've put plans together. We've action plans or a schedule, and we purposely have put certain people part of that educational process or whatever. We think we've covered everything. Off they go, and then later we're like, what do you mean you don't know that? What do you mean you didn't get that? Where how did we miss the boat on that one? Right?
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. Okay, good. Um, Meet and greets with other staff, lovely. Now, let me ask a question. On the meet and greet, is that also an opportunity? And I'm asking because I'm just kind of confirming. I have this thought process of let's make sure that I'm not assuming, let's ensure. So, based on that, does meet and greet also kind of say, here's what my job does or is, and how my job interacts with your position or set of responsibilities. So it's not just like, hey, I'm Deborah. I serve as the vice president of the company, and people go, oh, okay. It's like, no, how will we like connect? Is that kind of part of that, Shauna? And she's like, I'm not, I'm not talking to you. She's probably got a microphone challenge or such. Um, and I saw that someone says we give them swag. See, and I actually think that swag is a good thing up front instead of making people wait, the first year, 5 years, or whatever it is, or some kind of funky anniversary or celebratory something. Because let's get them, I mean, this is going to sound kind of terrible. Let's get them branded right away. Um, Okay, she's saying yes. What how my position interacts with others. Fabulous, fabulous. Um, so personal onboarding with safety and the HR management team, lovely. Okay, so be thinking about I really to me and I know that I'm kind of with a group of HR people, so I'm going to be very thoughtful when I say this, because this is not probably very HR-y in this respects. When someone says yes to us and they come on board, well, I kind of think like we're dating. They said yes to us and we said yes to them. And you have to keep that relationship going. It takes work, just like any good relationship does. And I'm not talking about, getting personal. I'm talking about, do we want to retain them? What's working? Are we knowing what motivates them? Are we tapping into that? And in a lot of respects, I understand this isn't necessarily HR. We got to teach our managers how to do that. Because right now, I'm actually working with a group of supervisors, two groups. One has 40 in the class, and one has 60 in the class. And one of my gentlemen yesterday, I asked the question, are you a people when it comes to supervision? Okay, and there are 60 of them in this class. And he goes, I'm kind of not really a people. And here's what I mean when I say that. He's got a military background. He's been taught to care about the unit, to care about them being successful in accomplishing things, to care about them to get them to next, but not to get too close or too personal with them. And I thought, on one hand, good, we have boundaries. And on another hand, he's not been taught to necessarily have empathy. And he even said that he shared that one of the people that was part of not his direct individual, but one of his others had a direct, trying to remember the vocabulary that he used, but that's not as important as the concept. Um, they were struggling, they took their life, and his person said to him, I don't have any emotions around that. And that's what the military taught them. And I think that's a concern. And so I like the fact that he shared that with me because that is the kind of thing, not this situation, but that's the kind of thing I think an employee needs to know about him. I was in the military and this is what they teach us. Right. And so that's that little puzzle piece that says, oh, now I kind of understand why you kind of navigate a certain way or handle things a certain way. So when we think about this sense of belonging and connection, what's going on for our managers and supervisors? Because we can do something at our level. They're the ones that have the employees on a day-to-day basis, right? They're the ones that are going to create that psychological safety. And while we want to create it and have employees comfortable with us, we're not their direct we're not their direct supervisor, right? They're not our direct reports, unless, of course, you have some in your own department. So being able to think about that in conjunction with what are we doing and how are we doing it? So when we think about strategies to create a culture of belonging from a science-based standpoint, research suggests these are the five kind of key areas. I'm not suggesting that there aren't others. I'm just suggesting to you that these are some really good areas for us to kind of focus on and thinking about. And so when you think about in general, saying, okay, I'm going to make psychological safety a priority. Well, what does that really like mean to you? What does it mean to the organization? Are you having conversations about this, right? That a team is confident, that an individual member is confident and not embarrassed to bring something up, to bring something forward, to ask those questions, that it's okay to brainstorm out loud, right? And that it's okay to piggyback on people's ideas and to kind of voice that half idea, that half baked, half finished thought, because I'm comfortable with the fact that maybe others will have something else to bring to the table in that regards. And I think that sometimes people don't always go there. And part of that also can be self-confidence, right? And that's also a role of a manager and supervisor to be thinking about how can I help somebody pull back some of that, let that confidence, let that expertise shine. And let's face it, sometimes we inherit people that came from another place, another supervisor that kind of done them wrong, and they didn't have any of that. So when we think about leaders who value honesty and candor, um, truth telling, that managers and supervisors have their back, that's going to create safety. So inside your organizations, sure, making it a priority. Are you training on that? Are you talking about that? Does the organization have manager supervisor meetings in some fashion or another? Is this as a topic that we talk about? Or does it sound too squishy depending on your organization? So, because I think sometimes we can end up with a blame and shame kind of environment or finger pointing or something along those lines. And it's not safe to take risks of any sort. Or what's the reaction when we make a mistake? I don't know. That's just number one. Thoughts, observations, takeaways?
I just think it's good to get some other people's opinions because they can think of some things like I feel like I'm a safety director and I do a lot of onboarding and help kind of manage that, but it's touched by labor. It's touched by admins. It's touched by a lot of people. And if one person doesn't do their part, it doesn't come out good. So getting other people's opinions and commitment to be a part of the process is a good thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that that's probably true in a lot of areas. Like if you're going to roll out a new policy or we're looking at changing directions or a new initiative or something like that, can we bring in somebody from marketing, somebody from safety, somebody from production and see, have them hear things? And it's like, well, we would be thinking about, or when we hear that, it resonates up in this area. So, because otherwise, it's like, oh, we didn't even think about that. That wasn't even, boy, that didn't even cross our minds. And that's the kind of thing that can help us even be broader scope, right? Be more strategic, in some fashion or another. So I like that, Amy. I like that a lot. Okay. Other other thoughts or things that you're doing to make it a priority?
For psychological safety, one of the like the most basic things for me is in groups, meetings, whatever, um, watching for people who talk over one another. Don't let somebody finish their thought. Maybe somebody has, sort of, by nature loud and dramatic, and keeping an eye on other people that maybe just shrink back from that and just say, my opinion doesn't matter because this person is so loud and dramatic. Doesn't matter, if I agree with them, who cares? If I don't agree with them, I'm not going to say anything because they're just going to talk over the top of me. And as an HR professional, I watch for that sort of thing so that I can help manage that, help draw that quieter person out and say, so and so, did you have a comment on that? Would you like to, just like really basic social interaction sometimes can do a lot.
Absolutely. Because I think, Shauna, actually, one of the things that you're bringing up is some of those things are just rude. It's just kind of rude, maybe unprofessional to do to someone else. And yet, let's be honest, how self-aware are some people, or not at all, that they're even doing it? And sometimes just saying, hey, I don't know if you know, you have a tendency to like finish other people's sentences or interrupt people. Or I noticed during that meeting, you interrupted her 4 times. I did? That's the kind of thing. It's like, yeah. So I don't know if you know, but that actually, then she didn't say anything the rest of the meeting. She didn't. And that's that's then kind of bringing something to the awareness. And that in and of itself is it okay to provide feedback to people? So to me, not just being open minded to learning new things and open to, it's also being growth minded, open to the feedback, willing to hear it in the element that it's being delivered for your own growth and development, the betterment of the whole, because then we all succeed, right? We all get better in that respects. So great observation. Anybody else? So leverage. Now, I know here we are sitting in a virtual conversation, but technology makes it possible, for us to do all kinds of things, right? Um, Now, again, a little bit of science based here. Really, our brains are built for more in-person interaction. Our brains do better when we can see like the whole person, body language, all that kind of fun stuff. We've got these kind of micro muscular elements that we pay attention to. The brain is looking for some of those. Well, okay, in all fairness, let's just confront reality. I can only see your faces, 3 of you. The rest of you, I can't see any micro anythings because there's nothing to see, right? So when then you're trying to gauge, is it resonating? Is it not resonating? I mean, I don't even know if some of you are really there, just your name on a screen, right? So when you think about those kinds of things, how is that from a communication, effective kind of thing? So when can you have in person and when is that going to be most beneficial? So again, you're talking about sense of connection and belonging and safety coming together. So does this, what we're doing right now, build that? Does it reinforce that? It might be a necessity. I get that. I think a lot of people do. Some people find safety in not being in person. And I learned that through the pandemic and teaching class when people said, I would never come to your class in person. The fact that it's offered virtually, love it. I was like, what? You would never come if it was actually in person? That was a whole awakening for me. So the fact that we have options is great. And yet, then how do we, early on, just developmentally, early on, building trust is spending time together. So, can some of your meetings be in person versus only online? Right? So, think about just intentionality around that. Okay. So, when we think about making inclusion part of your focus, you tell me, how many of you at some point in time, we could say in your life, from beginning to end to where we are today, at some point in time, have you felt excluded? Have you felt left out? Okay. And how did that feel? Kind of crappy? Look at that sad face. Okay. Oh, we have a tear coming from Heather, right? It's sad. Okay, so I want to share something with you. I have two things. We'll move away from this slide and we'll come back to it. But I'm going to share something with you. There was actually an experiment done, college level. I'm not going to remember which university. You could probably Google something and it'll pop up. I'm sure there's been more than one of these. But what they did is they actually asked people to wear electrons on their head. Okay. And what they were doing is they were trying to see about pain points and where they lit up in terms of your brain. And it was twofold. One, when you saw video of things taking place and people being left out, right? And it could be any kind of situation, where in your brain did it kind of light up on these electrodes in terms of on the computer? And and so people were in situations where they weren't asked to join or be part of. There were circles of people and someone was standing on the outside, and the answer was our brains would light up. Then it was an experiment, same things attached, and we were being left out of situations, not included in some fashion or another. The same areas lit up in our brain. It does not matter whether we're actually having it happen to us or we're watching it happen to others. It still is a pain point in our brain of exclusion. I think that's extremely important. So when we think about trying to make inclusion a focal point, what are we doing to make sure that that's happening inside our organization? Because long term exclusion and impacts of isolation, there was actually, and I'm not going to have, because I didn't make even any notes to myself, a couple of years ago, there was somebody who wrote an article and put together some information about kind of this epidemic coming out of and even part of the pandemic, loneliness. And and we came out of the pandemic and people started returning to work and people were still lonely. Now, part of the people that they interviewed and talked to were people who were sitting side by side, going to work every day, sitting side by side others. And the way they were describing how they were feeling is, I feel isolated. I feel alone. They were with others, but being with people or around people didn't have that sense of connection or belonging or warmth or anything. They still felt alone. And so some of that can be mental well-being, but part of that is what are we doing or how are we doing it? How do we approach people? How do we show up every day at work? What's the culture? What's the environment like? in terms of where we work. And so I think it's interesting that several of these um, lists have some similarities, these two, in terms of isolation or exclusion. It's painful, however you look at it, and it's not okay long term. And to the point that Heather is sharing is, what if we're kind of hands off and we don't even notice that someone's being excluded? Well, guess what? This is what it can look like. Now, and this isn't really where I was going with our conversation at all, is this might be the real reason why we need to be able to have an EAP, right? An employee assistance plan, resources where we can refer people. Because I'm not suggesting that you're an expert in this area. I know I'm not an expert. I know more than I ever thought I would. But the answer is your managers and supervisors are not experts, but they do need to know and pay attention to red flags. They do need to know when someone's not acting like themselves or things seem a little off or different, and maybe bring that to your attention so that we can assist and get them resources or point them in the right direction. We can't make anybody do anything, but we can check in with them. But they also need to know that that is a potential red flag. And so when the pandemic hit, I even had people that I was working with who said, "Hey, everything's good. They're all working." I'm like, "Are you checking in with them? Are you doing your regular check ins?" "What do you mean regular?" "Like your one on one check ins like you were before." "No." I had people in class say, "No, I haven't talked to my supervisor in 2 months." "What?" "Well, when a supervisor tells me they haven't even talked to their employee in months, back then, in all sincerity, do you know if they're still alive? Do you know if they're ill? How are they doing?" A lot of people lived alone. This not be good. We sent people home. We don't even know how they're doing. This isn't just how's the job going. This is how are you doing? And I'm sure you guys have had conversations in your workplaces about people saying, "I'm burned out." What's the definition of burnout? And that could be a conversation for a whole nother time because I'm not sure we all have the same definition. It definitely starts emotionally before it becomes physical. So, are we talking about those things? Because again, as I said, 5 key areas. How are we onboarding? With intention. And are we encouraging people to make mistakes and celebrate those mistakes? Because mistakes are on a path to learning. They really are. So, you tell me, what do you think? I've been talking way too much. What do you think about this list of culture of belonging? What would you add? What's kind of missing?
I'm looking at the list and thinking some bullet points would be, like make psychological safety a priority. Okay, what are some, take homes to, what are some things we could be doing? Like Heather's question, I need advice for what to do when the manager of our organization is very hands off and may not notice.
Mhm, mhm. So what are you guys doing? What would you do? What would you suggest?
I mean, I think having a conversation with that manager, if as an HR professional you recognize this, having a conversation with that manager would be a good place to start because, as you said, Deborah, they may not have any idea. They may have a reason for being hands off, but then they need to be trained if they're going to be a good leader. They need to maybe get some skills in noticing, in another topic, emotional intelligence, to be able to recognize when an employee is being excluded.
Hmm. Well, and if you think about, I mean, step one is let's define it, right? And if we have elements of being able to ask a question, speak up, challenge status quo, then is that okay? Are people able to do that? If you think about your departments, your divisions, your locations, what have you heard from your managers? What comments, what questions have they had? Employees coming in. Is that happening? Right? Now let's talk about manager training. What do you want to include in that? Right? Um, do we do we talk about it? Is that vocabulary people understand? When we think about um, providing feedback, is it okay to provide feedback? Are people listening to that? What does it really mean and what does it look like in your organization? So when we think about, yes, sub bullet points, and I promise you, if I was doing a class, yeah, I'm going to give you all kinds of stuff, right? But this is 1 hour. So, but being able to think about what is it you would do or how would you take this to the next level? When you think about leveraging your in-person interactions, what are you doing now that's in person versus could you mix it up a little bit? Where would there be some benefit? I have one client down in Eugene, right? Your neck of the woods, Shauna, and they have a department. Now, the organization is physically in Eugene, but they have one department that's fully remote. They're all over the country. One time a year, they bring everybody in. That's only one time a year. There is turnover and activities and things like that. So, one of the things we talked about was how do we build a team that's a fully remote team so that we even feel a sense of team, let alone trust and safety and comfort with each other. And in some cases, they've never met each other personally until we get to that one time a year. And so, thinking about I mean, let's be realistic. They're a fully remote team, so they're not going to have a lot of in-person interactions. But then let's make that one time a year. What would be meaningful? What would be helpful to doing that and then continuing that activity or sets of activity when they quote go away to keep that element, whatever we can, alive as much as possible, right? So when you think about inclusion, how do we, I mean, something very simple. And how many of you've all gone to like a conference, you've gone to a gathering, and let's face it, there can be little cliques, and you're talking with a group of people, and there's someone a little bit kind of on the periphery. All you have to do is take one step out and pivot to invite that person in. It's a simple movement to include somebody, but you also have to be paying attention that there is somebody who's kind of standing right there, looking a little lost or not connected. And it's like, hey, Shauna, join us. Come on in, right? Open up that circle just a little bit more. Right? Anybody ever been on the outside of the circle, kind of standing there, looking around, wandering, kind of like, should I? Can I? Do I speak up? Okay, it's just my special little problem, right? So you're right. Absolutely. There can be additional bullet points under that, under these. Okay. So, and again, think about, and a great question is to ask people when they felt excluded, right? Give examples of, and how did that feel? And how can we turn that around? What would you have liked to have had happen with a somebody? Because when we think about there's really four key stages of psychological safety, and hopefully you guys can see this well enough in terms of the slide, and maybe your organization, the goal would be to kind of move through each of these phases so that we're at the top, right? So but we start at the bottom excuse me, um, when having a sense or a feeling of belonging. And this is kind of like if you're familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? We start with the basic need and we move our way up. But the idea is, from an inclusion standpoint, I really do belong here. I feel accepted. I'm allowed to kind of be me, right? I'm part of the team. When it comes to the learning mode, feeling more comfortable making mistakes and that there's no fear of judgment or retribution, that this is a path to learning, that it's okay, then I can admit my mistakes out loud, right? As opposed to covering them up or pointing fingers, that it's someone else's or another department or somebody else's fault in some fashion or another. Um, in that contributor level, in terms of valued for what I bring to the table, sharing ideas and suggestions. Again, half thought, maybe ideas and suggestions. But the people who are usually closest to a challenge are usually ones that also have the best ideas for solution because they're closest to it. A manager and supervisor isn't necessarily working with it day to day to day. So are they asking for input? And a contributor feels comfortable offering solutions, or have they been shut down, right? Have they been talked over? They did share an idea and nobody responded really. Then 6 minutes later, someone else shares basically the same idea and everybody is coming up with something going, woohoo, that's great. And you're like, I just said that. That would be a challenge versus a challenger who is going to say, I'm not I'm not sure that's accurate, or I think maybe we've always done it that way, but do we always have to keep doing it that way? They're willing to kind of challenge the assumptions, challenge the status quo, and put something else out there. They're not just challenging for challenging's sake. They might actually have some other solutions and ideas. And are we open to listening and hearing those and let's run with that. Let's vet that idea a little bit. So the idea is, how are we running through these? Because the idea is, if this is kind of like a path to maybe more innovation, more creativity, more inclusion, because we're able to kind of go through each of these. But that's got to be a comfort level. There are stages, as it were. And some of this is like through team building and what's our culture like? Is it supportive of that? Um, because we can say it, right? We can we can have. I mean, many of your organizations have core values. We put them on the wall. We have a brochure. It's part of our marketing activity. But are we living our core values? So we say it's okay to make a mistake, or we say we want you to speak up, yet we go to a meeting and it's still quiet. Our best people are leaving. Why? Something's going on. Even though we say it, what are the actions that support it? So it's got to be not only doings and activities, it can't just be like words and policies, right? It has to be more than that. So does that, you tell me. I mean, are there meetings where only the senior people speak and everything's fine? Clearly it isn't.
One of the things our company did to kind of attack this, and I'm not saying we're perfect or anything, is they made a lot of subcommittees and they let people drive them like charity committees. And they get to have the voice and they own it, and a manager sits in there, but they don't drive the meeting. It's been kind of cool.
Nice. And the idea of breaking things down and maybe into smaller pieces that are more like manageable or doable or
Mhm.
digestible.
Or SWAT team meetings with all sorts of areas of the organization. But again, the manager's there, but it's more for feedback.
Love it. Love it. So, where do you guys think you are based on this kind of visual? Where do you think your organization sits? More maybe different departments or in different areas?
Yeah, and looking at this model, uh, sometimes a whole lot of work has to be done just to get to that bottom level, to the inclusion level. You know, it's not like we all start there. Um, and I think when you said about departments, I see, and my organization is super small, so um, I think there might be some groups of that organization that are in higher stages, like learner, maybe contributor, um, um, and yet some are not there yet. And I don't know if that's, I suppose it's a good idea to want to balance that throughout the organization so that the whole organization is stronger. But I think, there are some inherent problems with, maybe a department leader isn't as strong in that area, that kind of thing.
Hmm. Well, and it will kind of show up, especially if departments are working together or they're working on a project together or something like that, and someone has more freedom or more autonomy than another department. Oh, no, I can't do that. I need to check with, or no, I can't go there yet because, and it's like, well, why? Or, well, I don't know if we could ask those questions. Well, why not? So you could see it kind of developing in that respects, right? So that's when that's when you know your leaders are not in the same place or not behaving the same way. And that could stymie something potentially, right? Or these small breakout groups that are having conversations, if they're intermingled. Well, like, no, well, we would never go there. That there will be, they won't say, you know, we're at a contributor level. They're not going to say that, right? They're going to say something else. Like, "Oh, well, we can question our boss all the time. In fact, they tell us all the time. We're supposed to tell them, you know, hands up. I want to question that. I want to challenge that. I don't think that that's true. And here's why. They tell us to do that all the time." Well, no, that wouldn't fly in our department. That's, something like that would happen, right? Because one of my second question is what might represent leader actions, right? What would be the behavior or the action that um, that a leader would say or do that would represent these levels, right? That they believe in it or that they're fostering it in some fashion or another. What have you seen from your leadership level individuals that psychological safety is a thing, that they're offering it? So I think, Amy, you're saying that people, they're asking the room or they're asking questions, they're asking for the feedback, right? And meaning it and wanting it sincerely
Yeah.
in that regards,
Yep.
right? So, and the key is that this is the kind of thing that you might not be in all of those kind of meetings or situations, but maybe even asking them. I mean, the questions when I get to work with supervisors, the questions I'm asking them sometimes is like, what are you doing intentionally to build trust? Like intentionally, on purpose, what are you doing to build trust with your people? Because if you don't have trust, then it's kind of like nothing else matters, right? And if you're not being intentional about it, it's just happening by accident. And maybe some things are happening happy accidents, but if you're not intentional, then that also, where's the consistency? And employees really do like consistency, right? And if you're trying to step it up, and what I always say to people is get to next, whatever next is for you. Are you doing some of the right things to get you to next? And being an effective leader, not just a good supervisor, but an effective leader. We've got to be doing some things on purpose. And I think this makes a difference because, again, we can, part of belonging also is on an individual, right? They have to want to be part of something, but are we creating an environment that allows that to be true? Because if we aren't even fostering that, then even if they want it, it's the door isn't open for them. So it's kind of a two-way street in that respect. So part of it is knowing that there are stages, right, or levels, and are we are we there? And part of it, just making it kind of right here at the forefront, so that when you go back to the office and you're like overhearing a conversation or participating in a meeting, it's like, they just kind of made a statement and nobody said, do you have any data behind that? Or how do you know that? Or why do we think that that's true for us here? No one's questioning. We're just taking it. Do we want to ask? So I put both of those questions that I just asked you on the next slide so that you had them. Okay. And truly, this also can be an element of if you wanted to tie it into any kind of DEI element is do we have underrepresented individuals and how are they being heard, right? How is it safe for them to participate or be involved or sense of connection and belonging? Are they getting involved? Do they speak up? Do things feel equitable in some fashion, right? Because then as an HR person, you can coach your leaders on things because again, maybe they aren't seeing how it comes across to others. So when we think about then trying to take steps towards creating more of a psychological component at work, I think this can look a lot like our belonging list. In a lot of respects, these are the same kinds of things, right? Making it more of a priority, facilitating opportunities. And and I've been around the block just a couple thousand times. Facilitating opportunities for people to speak up. Is that a town hall? Is that a suggestion box? The old suggestion box. But make it a postcard, right? That they can send it in instead of a box. Whatever it is, what are the channels of communication? There are so many. What are we offering to people as a way to weigh in on things, right? This one is talking about when we have a failure. What are our ways of handling things? What's the norm? What does that look like? Creating space for wild hair ideas. Get out there, right? Conflicts. How do we handle conflicts? Do we train people on productive conflict resolution? Or are we ignoring it? Are we tolerating it? Are we putting up with people? Do we have unresolved conflicts that then people don't want to talk in meetings or don't want to bring up certain things? And we're not confronting reality, which means then no innovation, no creative ideas because we still have these underlying conflicts that are getting in the way. They've been swept under the carpet. That's not going to help anything, right? So being able to think about some of these things on the list, maybe just, you know, speaking up means having curiosity, being interested, being curious about how other people think or see something or wanting to learn more about something, right? And how people communicate or how they perceive things or how they define things might be how we got to the conflict in the first place. It doesn't have to be like this kind of conflict. It can just be something that's like, hey, maybe that didn't seem as respectful as it could have been. And that was a little off putting. And someone else walked away going, hey, that'd not be okay. So I mean, you tell me, what kills safety inside your organization? What will throw it out the window?
No trust or commitment, resources to do your job.
Yeah, I think those are good answers. I mean, what would your employees say kills safety?
And having leaders that won't help employees that are having a hard time speaking up or being included.
what about even not necessarily even our topic per se, but when I heard you say that, Shauna, I'm also thinking about what about managers or supervisors who are struggling with somebody who is not getting it? Maybe they're supposed to be learning something new, or a new employee, and training isn't going well, and they're frustrated, and someone who isn't picking it up as fast as they should, maybe because they learn differently, different than other people who they've experienced before. And they need to take a little bit more time or energy with somebody. Maybe they're neurodiverse in some fashion and they aren't being thoughtful about that. And they just are getting frustrated, right?
Well, the psychological safety is a chain reaction then, because if you have a manager that's experiencing this, but they don't feel like they can go to their superior or their HR department, they're just going to get blown off or said, "Oh, can you just deal with this or whatever?" Somebody, it would be terrible, but that's what I mean about it. It's a chain reaction. The psychological safety has to go all the levels in
Right?
order for somebody to get help in this situation.
Right? And in that respect, starts at the very beginning, right? It's at the very beginning of the relationship, the working relationship, and thinking about how are we setting the stage for that, whomever is involved in that whole process. And I think this could be a question that you ask employees, leadership, whomever, and see what they come up with, right? Based on their experience. And that could be experience based on experience, how long you've been doing this, or just personal experience, right? Get people talking, get small groups together to come up with all kinds of ideas and suggestions in regards to that, let alone, um, having people share their own personal kind of situation. And I don't know about you. I am thoughtful about quote the time, but let me share something with you. And then I gave you, and you can see them in the slides that I'll give you, as I just had some wrap up kind of takeaways, some bullet points, Shauna. Um, but there's an example here that was somebody who believes in kind of the radical candor and sharing information. And so this individual did a presentation, and this was an individual who worked at Google. So I'll tell you that they made presentation to a group of individuals, and the boss was present. And after the presentation was over, asked the employee to kind of go on a walk with her to their next meeting or something like that. And the employee said, "Oh, okay." And so the boss started and said, "Hey, we just want to kind of let you know, um, you did a nice job on the presentation." And so the person kind of said she was rewarding me by giving me some feedback, and I really appreciated that. And so it was kind of interesting because they had a good working relationship. They'd been working together for a while. They trusted her, and at the beginning of the conversation they had a feeling that they were going to tell her something that they'd done wrong on the walk, but didn't dread it, didn't fear that that was going to be true, um, but felt that whatever it was, she would help her fix it in that regards. Um, but so that was number one, is kind of, you know, she started with the first order of kind of soliciting criticism in terms of how would you improve things? What would that look like? She went on to step two, saying, "Hey, focusing on some really good stuff that you're doing." She began the conversation that telling what had gone wrong, but what had gone right in the meeting as well. And then she moved on to step three, which was, here's the criticism, here's the constructive feedback, and and didn't make a big deal of it. But here's the deal. The criticism was, I think maybe there might be some tightening up in some of your vocabulary. And the person kind of brushed it off. Three times she said something in some way to kind of say, hey, I think maybe there might be some room for improvement here. I know a great coach that might help you, a great speech coach, and I can get Google to pay for it. Would you like an introduction? sometimes you probably heard an adage about, you're getting a message from someone, you're getting a message from someone, you're getting a message from someone, and they're not really paying attention. And then you get hit by a 2x4, right? And this is kind of like um, knowing your audience, gauging how the feedback is going to land on somebody. So when you think about how do we take feedback and you want like talking points, or you're trying to train managers and how to get safety, there's this element of who is it and how much can I say? So then the boss says something very specific like, when you say every 3 words, you sound stupid. That's what was said to this person. They finally got the 2x4 to the head. Oh, now I understand when you say, and tighten it up a little bit. So when we talk about radical candor, but you have to create that psychologically safe place, that the answer is, I believe that I trust her. She's going to give me good information, that there's a reason why we're having the conversation. We wouldn't do this otherwise. Now, for some people, that might sound really harsh, but the answer is, I was trying to say things the nice way, and you were like, yeah, okay. Oh, yep, yep, brushing it off. But she actually had a hand gesture that went with it, which is why the in person kind of component, right? Not over the phone, not in an email. Maybe you're going to miss some of it on virtual meetings, but being able to have that when it's significant or important. So gauging how that feedback is going to land and then making some adjustments. This is a good coaching conversation thought process just in general. So if we hadn't if she hadn't heard that message loud and clear enough, now I understand. And we've all heard that. We've all gone to a presentation and you almost want to go count, 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 count how many times they have those filler words, right? So being able to think about, this is what would be the epitome of what we're looking for people or inside our departments and organizations. Now, maybe you would phrase it differently. Great. But the idea is, do we have a safe place for people to be direct with each other? And how are we saying you still are here, you're still valuable, you contribute, you matter, and I want to grow you and help you because there's so much here as you make a difference, right? So I just wanted to give you an example of what that also could look like in some respects. So then I gave you some wrap up and takeaways. You can read them on your own. And then I'm going to send you the what's called a, do you have a, want to have a 7-day challenge? And it's in the slides. So yeah, I don't really have to send it to you. It's in here, that it came from the Center for Leadership out of Colorado. Um, 7 days to take a challenge. So they're in there in terms of having an observation. So I think that would be a good idea. And then there's a little calendar that's in the same kind of realm that might be something for you to use as a resource with your employees. So I'll make sure you have that link. And then I had a conversation with Miss Heather, and she actually sent me an article from the Harvard Business Review about fostering psychological safety. And so we'll attach that inside the email off to you all so you can read that article as well. She was quite impressed with that article, weren't you, Heather? Enough so that she sent it to me. And so I asked her permission if I could forward it on to you, and she said yes. So my questions always for the program is there something from the program that you found kind of beneficial, right? Something you'll start working on, something you might share with someone else, and maybe there's a what a policy, a behavior, or even a ritual that you might be able to influence after today based on this topic, right? Something, maybe it's a person you can influence in some fashion or another. So just something for you to, so now what, right? You spent some time, you heard some observations, maybe you saw some things in the in the chat box, right? That might be helpful. So if you have any questions, now's a great time to ask. And as we just officially close out our time, I will let you know that next month, we're going to be on November 5th. And we're going to be having, if you know Natalie Miller, she's going to join me as a guest. She's from Apprenti, and that is an organization that focuses on apprenticeships and not like your traditional apprenticeships. Um, and believe it or not, SHRM actually has apprenticeships with HR professionals. It's been going on for 3 years. I don't know that a lot of us who are members of SHRM knew that that was a thing, or that it had been going on that long, or that that's even an option for us in HR to be considering. We could have an apprentice inside our organization focusing on HR. So she's going to talk about that and share a little bit of information for us. So if you want to learn a little bit about that, and then in December, some of us are an HR department of one. Maybe we can help each other out about how to get it all done and handle it all. So we're going to talk about that in December. So again, if you have topics for 2026, let me know. Otherwise, I hope something here today was valuable. If you have questions, now's a good time. I will hang on to the very end. I'm always the last one in the room because I just prefer it that way. Anyway, questions, comments, observations from all of you. And again, I thank you for being here today. I think you're on mute or your volume is low. I can't hear you, but your little microphone button is not.
I got this crazy button here on the side and I don't know how to keep it from like I don't even anyway, never mind. Thank you. I wanted to say thank you. And I did just watch that Apprenti SHRM Foundation webinar yesterday or Monday, I think it
Yes.
was.
Yeah.
And I didn't know about that either. So that'll be
Right?
interesting.
And I didn't even know they were doing a video or a program or something like that because I got that too and I was like, interesting. But yeah, apparently Apprenti approached Sherm
Hmm,
and said, "Hey, maybe we can take this further." And
that's
said,
cool.
"Yes, please." So Natalie's been a big proponent and I found out like maybe March, April, May-ish,
Hmm.
something like that. And I was like, "Do you want to do a lunch bunch with me?" I said, "Let's try and promote." And she wrote a blog. She was a guest for my blog post, and so she'll be on the 10th of this month.
Oh,
Um,
okay. October
and
10th.
yep, so trying to just educate all of us out here because that thing's been around for a while and I just don't think hardly anybody knows about it. And those of us that are active SHRM members, no
No,
idea,
I'm the state SHRM Foundation director. I had no idea.
right? Yeah, it's not okay. Not okay.
I have to
So
jump. Thank you so much, Deborah. Great to see
you
you.
bet.
Great to hear you, and we'll be in touch.
Take care of yourself, Shauna. Nice to see you as well. Alrighty. Hey, Miss Heather. Um, you're the one on the outside. Now you're excluded. Oh, interesting. Um, you want to chat for a few minutes? You want me to turn off the recording? You can't talk out loud right now. Okay, well, guess what? I sort of can. So here's the deal. Thank you, everybody, for joining for this HR Lunch Bunch. I really am glad that you were here and part of it. Those of you who are watching on demand, glad that you tuned in or took a listen in one way or another. So thank you so very much. We hope to see you or have you participate again in the future in some fashion or another. We'll call it a good one and a done one for this time around. Take care, everybody.